believe that that ladder that went from heaven down to earth was representing our literal DNA, because our DNA can actually be changed by trauma.
Have a great friend today with us. Dr. Anita works with Bishop Jakes at the Potter's House. She's done some leadership training for us here at Lakewood. An amazing minister, amazing speaker. Come on, let's make Dr. Anita feel welcome today.
Hi, Dr. Anita.
Hi, Oprah.
God really has set the stage to catapult her message and her ministry for such a time as this. So you are not going to want to miss any word from Dr. Anita Phillips. Here she is.
And I want to draw attention specifically to this part of the story that's told in Genesis chapter 28, verses 10 through 25 and 20 through 21. In this passage, we find Jacob alone. He has run away from his family. He's on his way to another place, and he stops and lies down in the wilderness somewhere with a rock for his pillow. He had a family. He had a place to stay. He had connection. He wasn't alone, but now he's alone. And sometimes trauma disconnects us from our loved ones, disconnects us from family. Maybe you feel like you've had to extract yourself because the environment is toxic in a way that's killing you. And so you recognize you needed to go away, but where do you go when you go away? And sometimes feeling alone can feel worse than even being toxically connected because of that trauma. So Jacob is out there all by himself. He lies down on a rock to fall asleep, and he has a dream. And in this dream, there's a ladder that reaches from the earth all the way to heaven. God is standing at the top of that ladder, speaking a word about blessings to the generations that are to come after him. And he sees angels going up and down this ladder. And I remember reading that and thinking, God, what is this ladder? And do you know what the Lord revealed to me?
And that's what God told me. He told me, back away from the Bible, lay down the scripture, stop having scriptural argument.
That ladder represents generations. There's only one structure in our body that looks like a ladder. It's our DNA. DNA is literally a ladder. It's just twisted a little bit, but it is a ladder. I believe that that ladder that went from heaven down to earth was representing our literal DNA, because our DNA can actually be changed by trauma. When something happens to you that breaks you, it actually changes your DNA in a way that can be passed down from generation to generation.
I don't believe it. What would that take? I said you would have to have the activation state of certain genes in the brain would have to be transmitted to the sperm in a controlled way that then cause things to happen to the next generation. I don't think there's any such mechanism. And I'll tell you, it's more complicated than that, because not only that, when you start changing these gene activation patterns, they have to be the right patterns at different times in development. So let's suppose there was a gene that becomes more activated when you say learn calculus. Or maybe most likely less activated, but at any rate. The point is that same gene is probably not going to, you wouldn't want it to have a different activation state in early development, because that would probably have some bad consequence. See, not only would these changes happen, they would have to be controlled as to what time they occurred. You want it to happen when you're older, not at early stages, which it would probably interfere with something. There's no way for this to happen. So adaptive transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, I don't think it exists. But a lot of people would like it to exist.
When a mother is very stressed when she is pregnant, it can alter how the chemistry of that baby's brain is working, so that the child may be born more prone to be anxious, more prone to be stressed. So some of you were born broken in this space because of what your mother or father may have been going through at the time that you were developing in the womb. But it is not over. Jacob saw this ladder being dealt with. Angels going up. So this is the generations before you, and angels coming down, the generations to come, and knowing through that vision that God could make a change in what was going on.
You see, Jacob's ladder shows us how God will reverse the effects of man's sin, typified by the Tower of Babel. How would he do this? God would do what humans tried to do. At Babel, it was man's effort, but at Jacob's ladder, it was God's. This dream is not ultimately fulfilled in Jacob's life, but it is in Jesus's. Jesus actually references this story at the beginning of the Gospel of John. He says that angels will descend and ascend on him like they did at Jacob's ladder. What does he mean by this? He means that he is the one that connects earth and heaven. How appropriate is it then that later in John's gospel, Jesus calls himself the gate? Jesus opens up the way to God. Getting to God is not about building a big enough tower of good works and effort so that you can get where He is. Getting to God starts with God getting to us. He comes down the ladder, and He did this completely in Jesus. God left heaven to come to earth in order to give us access to Himself.
Your brokenness was not your fault, but here you are. It's on you to heal. Your healing is your responsibility.